Your unconditional kindness isn't a virtue. It's a slow psychological suicide. The people who destroyed you didn't hurt you by mistake. They hunted your empathy like a thermal signature. To discover the chilling secret to becoming completely unfuckwithable, you must hear this to the very end. They lied to you. From the moment you could understand words, they fed you a beautifully crafted, highly venomous lie. They told you that if you swallowed your pride, if you gave unconditionally, and if you continuously set yourself on fire to keep others warm, the universe would eventually reward you with respect, loyalty, and love. But look closely in the mirror. Look at the profound, hollow exhaustion hiding behind your eyes. What has being the perpetual, bigger person actually given you, other than a front-row seat to your own psychological slaughter? You have bled out on the altar of other people's egos, desperately believing your suffering was a noble virtue, when in reality it was nothing but an open invitation for predators to feast. Welcome to the brutal awakening. Myth Eryndor warmly welcomes you to a space where comforting illusions come to die. If the silent, agonizing screams of betrayal in your mind are finally demanding an answer, I urge you to hit that subscribe button right now to support our channel, because the deeply hidden truths we are about to dissect today will irreversibly change the trajectory of your life, and you will not want to miss a single second of the revelation waiting at the end. Let me tell you about Kay. Kay is not a fictional character or a distant stranger. Kay is the colleague sitting quietly across from you, the friend from your childhood, or perhaps the exact reflection of who you were just a few agonizing years ago. Kay was the flawless embodiment of a good person, perfectly programmed by a hypocritical society. Kay stayed late at the office every single night to carry the heavy burdens that others cunningly dumped. Kay smiled and softly said, "It is absolutely fine," when financially used and discarded by so-called friends, and Kay constantly fractured their own core boundaries just to buy a fleeting counterfeit nod of approval from people who never truly cared if Kay lived or died. But this world is not a fairy tale spun from stardust and cosmic justice. Kay's relentless kindness was never once met with gratitude. It was coldly calculated as sheer weakness. When Kay finally collapsed, drained of all finances, energy, and spirit, crying out in the dark for a lifeline, the very parasites who had spent years feeding on Kay's soul vanished into thin air without leaving a single footprint. That was not just the temporary sting of betrayal. It was a devastating existential collapse. Kay's entire moral compass, the sacred lifelong belief in karma, shattered into a million jagged pieces against the cold concrete floor of reality. The horrifying truth that Kay and you must confront right now is that unconditional kindness in a world crawling with dark psychology is not a moral high ground. It is a slow, agonizing suicide. Narcissists, sociopaths, and emotional manipulators possess a razor-sharp biological radar for the good person. They do not see your pure heart. They see an unguarded goldmine. They weaponize your innate guilt, drown you in fabricated flattery, and violently pull your emotional strings until you are nothing but a hollow marionette dancing for their sick amusement. If you continue to walk onto this battlefield without heavy armor, you will bleed until there is absolutely nothing left to give. In the deafening silence of that rock bottom, Kay realized a terrifying but profoundly liberating truth: that naive, approval-starving, conflict-terrified version of oneself had to be slaughtered. Version 1 had to be buried alive under the heavy dirt of absolute disillusionment. This is no longer a philosophical choice. It is the ultimate biological mandate for survival. It is time to awaken version 2. This new entity is not a cartoonish villain seeking to burn the innocent world down. Rather, it is a profoundly awakened sovereign, absolutely ruthless toward its own past stupidity, and violently sharp in its judgment. As the great political philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli coldly diagnosed a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness, in everything must necessarily come to ruin among so many who are not good. Therefore, to survive and hold power, you must learn how not to be good and to use this dark knowledge strictly according to necessity. This chillingly pragmatic philosophy is the master key to your evolution. You do not discard your morality. You brutally upgrade it. Your empathy now requires a secure password, your kindness operates through a relentless filter, and your forgiveness comes with an astronomical price tag. You no longer listen to the poetic, empty lies spilling from their mouths. You ruthlessly dissect the silent truth of their actions. Version 2 understands perfectly that true power is never handed down by the heavens. It is violently seized by the cold, calculating edge of a sovereign mind. You are stepping into an uncharted territory where you are no longer a bleeding victim begging for scraps of basic decency, but the undisputed grandmaster of your own chessboard, knowing exactly when to strategically concede a pawn and when to strike with lethal, unmerciful precision to protect the fortress of your soul. Your true evolution begins the exact microsecond you stop weeping over the unfairness of the game and start mastering its darkest rules to finally conquer it. To truly master these darkest rules and conquer the board, you must first unflinchingly examine the monsters sitting across from you in the shadows. The most fatal mistake version 1 ever made was projecting its own beautiful beating heart into the hollow chests of those who lack one entirely. You walk through life believing that everyone possessed a fundamental baseline of compassion, assuming that if someone hurt you, it was merely a misunderstanding or a byproduct of their own unhealed pain. That is the exact delusion predators rely upon to keep you docile. You must understand with bone-chilling clarity that narcissists, dark empaths, and sociopathic opportunists do not operate on your emotional frequency. They are fundamentally different biological machines. When they look at you, they do not see a fellow human being navigating the complexities of life. They see an appliance. They see a battery meant to be plugged in, drained of its vital life force, and tossed into the landfill when the gauge reads 0. Think back to the people who systematically dismantled Kay's sanity. They did not stumble into Kay's life by accident. These predators are equipped with an evolutionary sonar constantly scanning the environment for the specific thermal signature of high empathy, low boundaries, and an insatiable thirst for external validation. They observed how Kay rushed to apologize for things Kay never did. They took meticulous silent notes on how Kay absorbed their toxic moods without a single whisper of protest. Once they locked onto this target, the infiltration began. It is never a frontal assault. It is a meticulously crafted psychological siege. They initiated the love-bombing phase, mirroring Kay's deepest desires, simulating a soulmate connection, and creating an intoxicating illusion of safety. They manufactured a reality where they were the only ones who truly understood Kay. This was not affection. It was the anesthetic applied before the surgery of extraction began. Once the emotional hooks were buried deep in the flesh of your psyche, the mask began to slip micromillimeter by micromillimeter. The sudden, inexplicable, silent treatments, the subtle devaluations, the gaslighting that made you question the validity of your own memory. These were not random outbursts of a troubled mind. They were highly calculated calibration tests. They were testing the tensile strength of your submission. Every time you forgave them, without requiring them to bleed for your forgiveness, you sent them a profound psychological message. Your disrespect is perfectly acceptable here. You are actively funding your own psychological demise. To awaken version 2, you must completely strip away the romanticized narrative you have assigned to these people. You must view them with the cold, detached precision of a forensic scientist analyzing a crime scene. They are not broken souls waiting for your magical love to fix them. They are parasites executing their primary biological function. Understanding the mechanical, predictable, and utterly hollow nature of the predator's playbook is the exact moment their spell over you shatters forever, leaving you standing in the cold, harsh, but utterly invincible light of the truth. Once you strip away the masks of these emotional vampires and see their pathetic mechanics, the immediate necessity of forging impenetrable armor becomes violently clear. Society loves to casually throw around the word boundaries as if it were a polite request, gently whispered into the wind, a soft boundary line drawn in the sand, waiting to be washed away by the next incoming tide. But version 2 knows that a boundary without a severe, guaranteed consequence is absolutely nothing but a desperate suggestion to a predator. The architecture of your new boundaries must be forged from psychological titanium, impenetrable, and completely indifferent to the tears, tantrums, and manipulation tactics of those who are suddenly denied access to your energy. You must completely redefine your relationship with the word no. For version 1, saying no felt like a catastrophic moral failure, accompanied by waves of suffocating guilt and a frantic need to over-explain and justify the refusal. Version 2 understands that no is a complete, devastating, and indisputable sentence. When Kay finally began to rebuild from the ashes, the most agonizing phase was the withdrawal from the addiction to people-pleasing. When you stop serving as the infinite emotional dumping ground for your friends, family, and colleagues, they will not applaud your newfound self-respect. They will launch a vicious, coordinated campaign of guilt-tripping, labeling you as selfish, cold, and changed. They will mourn the death of the old you, because the old you was incredibly profitable for them. This is the crucible where version 2 is truly forged. You must stand completely unmoving in the face of their engineered outrage. You must learn to sit in the extreme discomfort of being misunderstood and let them hold whatever villainous image of you they need to construct in their minds. Their disappointment is no longer your jurisdiction. This requires the absolute merciless assassination of unearned guilt. Guilt is the primary lever manipulators pull to control your actions. It is the invisible chain linking you to their demands. You must conduct a ruthless audit of your internal guilt. Are you feeling guilty because you actually violated a core moral principle? Or are you feeling guilty because you simply refuse to let someone violate you? If it is the latter, you must train your mind to view that guilt as a badge of honor, a biological signal that your shields are holding strong against an attack. The fortress of your soul requires a gatekeeper who does not negotiate with terrorists. You must dictate the terms of engagement in every relationship you hold. Access to your time, your empathy, and your resources is no longer a fundamental human right granted to anyone who crosses your path. It is the highest of privileges, one that must be earned through consistent respect and can be instantaneously revoked the microsecond that respect falters. This is not about building walls to isolate yourself. It is about building a highly sophisticated filtering system that only allows kings, queens, and genuine allies to enter while the scavengers are left to starve at the gates. With your impenetrable fortress finely constructed and the parasites locked outside, you are now free to redefine what it actually means to be good in a world that is not. The greatest fallacy of the modern moral compass is the insistence that goodness must be a static, infinite, and blind default state. But uncalibrated goodness is just weakness wearing a halo. Version 2 does not abandon the capacity for profound love, empathy, and generosity. Instead, it weaponizes them. Goodness transitions from being a vulnerable, exposed nerve to becoming your most sophisticated strategic asset. You must become deeply Machiavellian in the distribution of your light. As you navigate the complex chessboards of corporate hierarchies, family dynamics, and romantic pursuits, you now operate with the terrifying advantage of sight. You see the unspoken power dynamics, the hidden agendas, and the silent transactions that govern all human interaction. To survive and conquer, you must master the art of reciprocal economics. Version 1 gave relentlessly, hoping to one day receive. Version 2 operates on a strict, unyielding system of energetic currency. You match effort, silence with silence, and betrayal with absolute freezing erasure. If a colleague attempts to subtly undermine you, you do not turn the other cheek and hope karma sorts it out. Karma is a painfully slow assassin. You become karma. You respond with calculated, disproportionate, and utterly calm psychological force, sending a shockwave through the system that clearly establishes you are an entity that cannot be trifled with. You use your profound understanding of human psychology not just to defend, but to maneuver. You learn when to deploy strategic silence to make the guilty hang themselves with their own anxious words. You learn when to offer a measured drop of warmth to secure loyalty and when to retract it completely to establish dominance. This is the chilling beauty of the awakened mind. You are completely unpredictable to the predators who once thought they had you mapped out. They try to press the old guilt buttons, and they are met with a terrifying, amused smirk. They try to deploy the silent treatment, and they are horrified to discover that you revel in the silence, using it to permanently erase them from your timeline. You are no longer terrified of conflict. You welcome it as an opportunity to test the sharpness of your blade. You understand that in the animal kingdom of human society, people do not respect what they can easily conquer. They respect what has the capacity to destroy them, but actively chooses not to. By cultivating this dangerous edge, your kindness actually regains its true sacred value. When you bestow your empathy upon someone now, it is not a desperate plea for them to stay. It is a magnificent sovereign gift from a position of absolute power. They feel the weight of it. They respect the rarity of it, and they know the severe consequences of ever taking it for granted. As you master this strategic deployment of your own light and shadow, the final, most glorious phase of your evolution begins to take breath. The exhaustion that once defined your very existence, the heavy, suffocating fatigue of carrying the world's expectations on your breaking shoulders, evaporates into thin air. In its place emerges a profound, terrifying, and exquisitely beautiful stillness. This is the state of sovereign transcendence. You have finally stopped fighting the fundamental nature of reality and have instead molded yourself into a master of its currents. Kay, who once cried in the dark, begging for a savior, is now the undisputed monarch of their own reality. The phone still rings, the manipulations still occasionally attempt to breach the perimeter, and the world remains as deeply flawed and predatory as it always was, but you remain entirely untouched. You watch the chaotic theater of human ego play out before you with the detached, serene amusement of a god watching mortals squabble over dirt. There is a specific sacred solitude that comes with reaching this echelon of self-mastery. The crowd around you will inevitably thin out. The users, the psychic vampires, and the fair-weather companions will fall away repelled by the searing heat of your newfound self-respect. But this solitude is not the lonely, desperate isolation of version 1. It is a sprawling, luxurious kingdom where you are finally permitted to breathe. The people who remain in your inner circle and the new ones who are carefully permitted to enter are of a completely different caliber. They are fellow sovereigns, individuals who respect your heavy armor and engage with you in the beautiful, mutually enriching dance of genuine connection, free from the toxic hooks of codependency. You finally realize that the ultimate goal of this brutal awakening was never about becoming a villain. It was about becoming completely unfuck-with-able. You have navigated the darkest abysses of human betrayal and returned not with a broken spirit but with a forged crown. You now possess the rare, dangerous knowledge that your peace is entirely in your own hands. You no longer wait for apologies that will never come because you have already extracted your own closure through your evolution. Let them whisper behind your back. Let them call you arrogant, cold, or unforgiving. The opinions of sheep do not keep the wolf awake at night. You are the architect of your own destiny, a beautifully dangerous masterpiece of boundaries, strategic empathy, and lethal self-respect. If you have journeyed with me to this very end, you know deep in your bones that there is no going back to the slaughterhouse of version 1. The fire has been lit, the illusions have been burned to ash. Step out of the wreckage, embrace the magnificent terror of your own absolute power, and claim the sovereign life that was always waiting for you on the other side of the collapse. Conclusion. The journey from the vulnerable, bleeding heart of version 1 to the sovereign, impenetrable fortress of version 2 is the ultimate metamorphosis of human survival. We have dissected the chilling mechanics of emotional predators who view empathy not as a virtue, but as a resource to be mercilessly drained. By tearing away the romanticized illusions of unhealed trauma in others, you recognize the absolute necessity of psychological titanium. Boundaries are no longer polite requests waiting to be violated. They are devastatingly clear consequences. Unearned guilt is no longer a lever for manipulators to exploit, but a biological badge of honor, signaling that your defenses are holding strong against infiltration. In this evolution, you do not abandon your goodness. You weaponize it. You transition from offering uncalibrated blind kindness to deploying empathy as a highly sophisticated reciprocal asset. You stop playing the perpetual victim in a psychological game rigged by narcissists and instead become the Machiavellian architect of your own reality. The ultimate destination is sovereign transcendence, a sacred state of utter detachment, serene peace, and lethal self-respect. You are no longer collateral damage in someone else's toxic narrative. You are the undisputed monarch of your own life, fully equipped with the vision to see hidden agendas and the power to command absolute respect. This awakening is not about becoming a villain. It is about becoming untouchable, ensuring your light is reserved solely for those who have earned the highest privilege of standing in it. Profound lesson learned. The most profound realization of this evolution is that uncalibrated empathy is self-destruction disguised as a virtue. Predators do not respect your infinite forgiveness. They biologically rely on it to consume you. True power does not come from building walls to isolate yourself, but from mastering the reciprocal economy of your own energy. Your kindness, time, and compassion must never be a blind default state. They are sacred currencies that must be fiercely guarded and bestowed only upon those who prove their loyalty, integrity, and consistent respect. How to apply this to your life today? Conduct a guilt audit. The next time you feel guilty for setting a boundary or saying, no, pause and analyze it. Are you feeling guilty because you actually harmed someone, or simply because you refuse to let them cross your boundaries? If it is the latter, treat that guilt as proof that your armor is working. Weaponize the word no. Stop over-explaining, justifying, and apologizing for your refusals. Practice delivering a firm, calm no as a complete and indisputable sentence. Let the other person sit in the discomfort of your boundary. Implement reciprocal economics. Stop over-investing in people who give you the bare minimum. Match effort with effort, respect with respect, and disrespect with absolute freezing silence. Withdraw your energy the microsecond it is taken for granted. Upgrade your gatekeeping. Treat access to your inner circle as the highest privilege. Radically filter your relationships, allowing only genuine allies to remain while actively locking out energy vampires regardless of their history with you. Question for you. What is one boundary you have recently set or plan to set today to protect your own peace and energy? Please share your thoughts and answer in the comments section below so our community can read your perspectives and learn from each other's experiences. If you found value in this video, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel and give us the motivation to keep creating more powerful content for you.